Hey Dave, how's it going today?
Not bad, Nick. How are you?
Fantastic. Beautiful Friday in Michigan, and we are excited to have a special guest on today to talk about
Yes.
leaving Michigan, which I don't know about you, I don't like doing at least in the next couple months, but eventually people do like to take trips outside of Michigan, and with everything going on with the pandemic and travel basically being shut down and then opening up and having some issues opening up, we thought it would be great to invite Kim Barber from Globetrotter Travel on today just to kind of talk about what to look for in travel going forward and give us some tips on maybe some strategies for booking travel and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah. If there's one goal, it seems that like ties all of our clients together is that they all want to travel. So
Yes,
it's
that
always
is,
a good topic.
it is. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So, I guess our big first question is just, what does the travel landscape look like as we kind of come out of the pandemic and as we reopen a little bit? What does that look like? And I know that you just came back from a trip, so you have firsthand
Right.
experience of,
Well,
of what's
field
going on too.
field
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I
experience.
do. Yeah, it's pretty optimistic. I think that every day there's new announcements. Countries are opening up or loosening up restrictions. And I know the last 2 months, May and June for Globetrotter travel have been record breaking. So I think that the demand is definitely there. I'm seeing a lot of interest. Trying to keep current on the announcements every day about which countries are opening up, and it is just constantly changing, but primarily for the good. I'm seeing a lot of places reopening. Airlines are adding more routes back into their schedules that were canceled last year when we kind of everything shut down. So yeah, it's looking good. There are still some hoops to jump through, some testing requirements, for different destinations. But as I just got back from a big international trip to a couple different countries last week, if you're willing to jump through the hoops, the rewards are there. You kind of get to have some exclusivity at some big tour sites that you probably wouldn't get to otherwise. So yeah.
very cool. So, speaking of some of the airlines, I've been hearing lately that there's some staff shortages and maybe canceling some flights. Is that something that you've experienced or
Yes.
seen?
Yeah, I have for sure. And I actually work a little bit part-time here in Lansing at our local airport. And I know that we're having staffing issues on a small local level as well. And one airline in particular, one of the major carriers over the last couple of weeks has been canceling quite a few flights. So there have been some issues with that. Hopefully, those mainline, those big airline jobs are in demand enough that I hope that they'll be able to fill those positions. There are some nice perks that come along with working for airlines, so I'm hopeful that they'll fill those positions and those routes will start filling back up.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So the other question that I had as it relates to travel is like, how do you, so if let's say I want to go to a country, how do you get, is there good information out there to know that
Yeah.
this
Where do you
country is
go?
open? And what about like coming back?
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. So the CDC is a good starting place for information. Travel.state.gov has some good information. I will say, obviously, I'm a little biased because I mean, obviously wanting to be safe, but I do think that you can travel safely currently. And so I take everything on the CDC and the travel.state.gov website, with a little bit of a grain of salt because, for a long time now, most countries have been at a level 4, do not travel, and for the main course of the shutdown during the pandemic, I definitely understood that, but I think some countries are lingering on there that really shouldn't still be there. So there are great they're great resources, and there's a lot of really good information on those websites. Your travel agent would also be staying current on those daily announcements as well. So I think those are all really good sources of information. And then certainly, I mean, there's no shortage of information online. So if you have a specific destination that you're looking at, there's probably been a blog written about it recently from someone who has traveled there. So yeah, there's definitely, like, even for my most recent trip to Dubai and the Maldives last week, I looked at the CDC, I looked at travel. .state.gov, but then I also found a blog from someone who had been during the pandemic, and found a lot of helpful tips on there as well.
Good. Is
Okay.
testing the
Yeah.
norm right now still, or not?
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Even for, I mean, most countries, even for vaccinated travelers, they are still requiring one negative test on entry. It does vary
Okay.
between if it's a PCR test or an antigen test. And then the other thing that sort of varies country to country is whether it's 48 hours prior to departure or 72 hours. So those are
Okay.
kind of the specifics that you really need to pay attention to. Um, I had someone learn that lesson the hard way, taking an antigen test instead of a PCR test. So those are kind of the specifics. You got to get into the nitty gritty for your different destinations. But yeah, but what I'm seeing is even vaccinated travelers,
Okay.
they're really still requiring a test.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
What?
let's say you get on the plane, but what happens if you get the virus or have a not a positive test on the way home? What happens then? I get does it?
Sure.
I'm sure it depends on the country, but
It does. It very much depends on where you are, and where you're going. So I've luckily not had that situation happen to myself or any of my clients. I know that all the resorts, for the most part, in Mexico and the Caribbean, where I'm sending a lot of people currently, they have testing on site. And if you do test positive, the majority of them are offering the 14-day quarantine period free of charge for yourself and a companion. So that's kind of been the running joke. Everybody kind of wants to test positive. So they get that bonus 2 weeks, but it doesn't sound like it's really a bonus 2 weeks in paradise. I think you are pretty much locked to your room. I stayed at a resort last week in the Maldives, and it was the same scenario, but they had a few people there who had tested positive and had to stay the extra 2 weeks, and they put them up in an overwater bungalow. And I thought, well, this wouldn't be
in
a terrible place to be quarantined, but
in
yeah, I think it just depends on where
in
you are
the
and the type.
insurance world, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There are some insurance. Some insurance companies have come out with coverage that actually would cover that specific situation if you were to test positive and needed to stay in quarantine. So you have to make sure that that coverage is on your plan. But there is insurance out there that does offer it now.
okay. Is that
Yeah.
so on the insurance
That's
level? Is that something that you're seeing a lot of people do or recommending that people?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was always, even pre-pandemic, I saw the best of the best and the worst of the worst. So I have always been of the mindset to get travel insurance like any other insurance. You hope you don't have to use it, but if you do, you're going to be glad you had it, right? So I've personally always carried an annual travel plan, insurance plan, because I travel so frequently. But even on bigger trips, I always, especially international trips, I always take out an additional policy just for that coverage. I haven't needed to use it very often, but a handful of times I have. So yes, now so more than ever, I do recommend travel insurance. You do have to read through your policy carefully or have an agent or somebody who can advise you, because a lot of the insurance companies, as soon as COVID was declared a pandemic, will not cover any COVID related cancellations. So you do have to know what you're buying, but there are still three or four that come to mind that I work with, companies that offer cancel for any reason coverage, and they are still offering that. And I can't tell you how many of my clients have had to use that over the past year, and it has really, they've gotten everything back except the premium on the insurance policy. So I absolutely recommend travel insurance, especially for international travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Not quite what it used to be. Certainly, kind of still coming back. It seems like from a lot of the for a lot of intents and purposes on what travel used to be and kind of where we're at right now.
Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, there are some extra hoops to jump through right now. It is not for the faint of heart. It can add, travel can be stressful, even for someone like myself who travels so frequently. It can be a lot. It can be stressful. And then to add all of these extra, very strict timelines on top of the already existing timelines for making your flight and checking in and all of those other things, it really it can be a lot. But that being said, like last week in Abu Dhabi, we went and visited this mosque that normally would have been full of people, and we had the place to ourselves. So, I mean, the pictures of this beautiful mosque would have been, fabulous no matter what. But the fact that there's not, 500,000 other tourists in our photos is pretty cool. I don't think that would happen in a different time. So the rewards are there if you're willing to jump through the hoops, but it can be a lot.
Yeah.
Are
So when do
are we
you
seeing
see
any?
that? Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, Nick. I was going to ask if there were anything you saw changing for domestic travel right now. Is there any concern there?
Nothing too big. I mean, as of now, the mask mandate for airlines is still in place, and I mean, I obviously don't know for sure, but I kind of see that staying in place for a little while, just because it really doesn't hurt the average person. It really doesn't. There's very few people that are hurt by wearing the mask. So I do think that the mask mandate will stay in place for a while. I think that airlines will continue to hand out hand sanitizer as you board the plane for a while. But as far as requirements, or a lot of people are asking me about, is there a vaccination requirement for domestic flights? And there has been nothing specific announced about that by any of the major carriers. So really at this point, and honestly, I have a hard time seeing how they could enforce that without seriously impacting their own bottom line. So at this
Right.
point, I just think ultimately it's masks and hand sanitizer, and that's kind of going to be the new normal for a while.
Yeah, I'll probably get hate mail for this, but that's kind of one of those where I hope it doesn't go away because I know that I've gotten lots of nasty things on planes before,
Right.
and that's probably gone way down with the number of people wearing masks and using hand sanitizer.
You're absolutely right. I've always been that person who, wiped down my tray table and everything
Yes.
when I boarded the plane. So, I'm not upset about it. I
Yeah.
have had to do some long flights wearing masks. I mean, it was 14 hours last week to Dubai, and it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but ultimately, I mean, it made me feel a little bit more comfortable. So I'm all right with it.
Yeah.
Are
So,
there any?
So with travel kind of picking back up and obviously limited number of flights and things like that, demand increasing, what are we seeing in terms of pricing and how do you see that playing out over the next 6-12 months?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm seeing a huge demand currently. The last couple of months have been just booming. And so I think that airlines are seeing that as well, and they are starting to increase their routes again and bring some of those canceled routes and um, flight back to their schedules. But that being said, I think there's this preconceived misconception that, oh, if I wait to the last minute, I'm going to get a great last minute deal. And that really has never been the case, or at least not in many, many years. I know there was a time when you could go to an airport and, just say, I have $100, where can I go? I think it's been a long time since that has happened. So, but even more so now, because everybody has been stuck at home for a year and people want to get out and about, and and all these people have travel credits. There's people who have had to cancel trips 2 or 3 times, so there's all these credits that have to be used by a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
And so the demand is there, and I think the demand is exceeding the supply currently. So that being said, I think planning early is huge, but prices, I am seeing them increase pretty rapidly. I could send somebody a quote on Monday, and by Wednesday or Thursday, um, I mean, travel prices are always fluctuating, but I'm seeing increases of $1,000,
Wow.
which is higher than you would ever see in sort of normal circumstances. So, so definitely, I'm telling people, if you can plan early, definitely I would recommend it, because you're going to get the best choice of flights that are available, and then the best pricing on the seats that are available, because like supply and demand, as the seats on the plane fill up, the price on the remaining seats increases. So
Sure.
so definitely planning early is key.
So how far in advance would you say? Like a year, 6 months?
Yeah. So airfare, most airlines, Southwest is the exception to this. Most airlines release their schedules 11 months in advance. Of travel. So generally that's when flights become available. I kind of, in my experience, the sweet spot is kind of between 6 and 10 months prior to travel. If you book flights right away at 11 months when they become available, you might be paying a premium because all of the competitors' flights aren't available yet. So I think 6 and 10 months is generally a good rule of thumb. That's when contracts are negotiated for the following year, and then you kind of have the best choice of available options for flights and lodging and tours and all of the things that you would be looking for your trip.
Cool.
That's
So
Yeah.
great.
really, we're looking
Yeah.
at planning for next year right now, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a lot of spring break of next year for 2022 right now. I'm getting a lot of those requests. So this is really the time, because the other thing is, and I know, I think probably Nick is aware of this, because he's heard me talk about it, but the Lansing Airport has charter flights, that go seasonally in the winter months, and that schedule just got released a few weeks ago, and those seats are very limited. Those seats, when they're gone, they're gone. And it's nice because in normal circumstances you can only fly nonstop out of Lansing to Detroit, Chicago, or Minneapolis, all of those exotic tropical destinations. And so so the when those seasonal flights to Mexico and the Caribbean come up, they go pretty quickly because it's convenient out of Lansing, and of course, it's a little more exciting than Minneapolis or Detroit is. So, so yeah, so the planning early is good, because I'm seeing the seats on those, and they've only been available for a couple of weeks. I'm seeing the numbers decrease pretty fast. Yeah.
Are you seeing any hesitancy from people about planning that far out when things are still so much in flux? That would be my big concern, is to book it all and then have the gamma variant of the virus
Sure.
emerge and change everything.
There are certainly some people who just aren't comfortable traveling at all right now, and so I am seeing that from some people. I think that the people that have been, like over the past year, who have had to rebook a trip 2 or 3 times, they're finally just, I mean, and again, I think people being vaccinated has something to do with that as well. I think that vaccination made it so people feel a bit more comfortable. So I am seeing some hesitation from the people who just aren't going to be comfortable. And that's fine. I would never try and encourage someone to travel right now if they're not comfortable with it. But for the most part, I mean, I had some people a year ago who were absolutely not going to travel until they were vaccinated. And now that they're vaccinated, I'm seeing this huge uptick in requests. So so I, a little bit of hesitation, but I think that vaccination, that was what people needed to, for the most part, to start feeling comfortable traveling again.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any changes that you see that you think might be permanent changes that come out of this in the travel industry?
Yeah, actually, one that I think is, I'm hopeful that it will be permanent is, airlines have really eased up on their change fees and cancellation
Yes.
fees. And I think I don't know if it's going to be permanent, but I mean, some airlines have announced that I think United was the last one to announce that they're doing away with change fees permanently, which pre-pandemic Southwest Airlines, they don't follow the rules, right? So they don't release their schedules 11 months in advance like the other airlines do. But on the flip side of that, they never charged change fees or cancellation fees. So a lot of people are very loyal to Southwest Airlines for that reason. And I think that as we sort of are exiting slowly the pandemic, the airlines that have done away with those cancellation and change fees, if they stay with that policy, if they're gone for good, I think that they will be more competitive with airlines like Southwest, who have always been really sort of easy to work with. So that is a change that I think is here to stay at least for a while. That is going to make my life a heck of a lot easier, and really is in the best interest of airline passengers, as a
Yeah,
whole.
yeah, that would be a
Yeah.
welcome improvement for sure.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Good.
because pre-pandemic, there was no room for human error, and I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm pretty good about not having typos on names, but I am human. Occasionally, it happens, and to not have to fret about paying $200 out of my own pocket to, fix an
Mm,
A instead of an E or whatever it is that I did, that's going to save me a lot of heartache, as well as the average person who's booking their flight, on the airline
yeah,
website themselves.
yeah,
So,
and
so I am hopeful that that's here to stay.
good, good.
Yeah.
So we've heard some rumblings of like a vaccine passport or
Yes.
having to be vaccinated to travel certain places. What's your take on that?
Yes. So as of yesterday, actually, the EU released a digital vaccine passport. That's not the actual name. What are they calling it? It's called a digital COVID-19 certificate, basically a vaccine passport. And so that is valid for anyone residing in or traveling through countries in the European Union. And so that's the first one on a large scale, like multi-country, that has sort of become available. Some other countries have done smaller like things on a local level, I suppose. There's talk about it in the US. Obviously, we've been hearing about it, but nothing has been released yet. I know that there's some states that have tried to do some things like that too. So I think that potentially it could happen in the future. And like, for me, having traveled internationally a few times during the pandemic, like last week going into Dubai, I had to fill out, they had an app and this whole questionnaire that I had to fill out and show a QR code when I landed. And so I think the concept is there, and it sounds kind of how I've read about the one in the EU. It sounds like that's how it's going to work. You kind of fill out the questionnaire, you maybe upload your vaccination card, and then you get this QR code. And that QR code basically makes you exempt from testing and quarantine requirements.
Mm,
Again, within the EU for this one. So I think that it will be coming. It seems like it's not happening as quickly for us as it might be happening in Europe. But yeah, I think that that might be kind of the way of the future of travel.
Wow.
Yeah.
very
So it
interesting.
sounds to me like there's just a ton of stuff going on with travel. Are you seeing a lot more people that are trying to hire you as a travel agent as opposed to going on like Kayak or Expedia and booking their own trips?
I honestly, I really am. And actually, again, pre-pandemic, I was starting to see this shift. A lot of people assume that the majority of my clientele is older, those people who maybe aren't as computer or internet savvy as
Sure.
younger millennials or whatever it is. But in reality, actually, even pre-pandemic, the majority of my clientele are on the younger side. They're kind of overwhelmed with the information that is available online. And there's some crazy statistics out there about, the average consumer visits like, I don't know, 23 different websites and spends 40 hours before they commit to booking a trip or something like that. And if you're of the mindset that time is money, that's
Yeah,
kind of
right.
absurd. So, but even, and then kind of add the pandemic on top of that. I know a lot of people had really unfortunate situations with online travel agencies. A big online travel agency went out of business and left everybody kind of hanging. And I got a lot of calls from people who had booked with those agencies, saying, "Oh my gosh, can you help me?" And I gave them advice, but unfortunately, as I was not the agent on record, there really wasn't a whole lot I could do. Um, but those people have said, okay, well, we've learned, lesson learned. We'll be working with a human agent in the future. So and like I said, May and June, record breaking sales months for us at Globetrotter Travel. So I am definitely seeing the demand, and I've gotten a lot of new clients over the past few months. So I think that people see the value in having a real live human to talk to, and maybe not be put into a call queue where you're going to sit on hold for 8 hours or whatever it is. So so yeah, I do think that, if we have to find a silver lining, at least in the travel industry where everything came screeching to a halt last year, I think a silver lining will be that going forward, I mean, obviously some positive change in the airline industry, but also that, people are really seeing the value of working with an agent.
Yeah, sure. And I know you and I talked about this before, Kim, but
Mhm.
I had to fire myself as our travel agent because I am the guy that spent 40 hours looking for the cheapest flight. I mean, that's the Dutch in me, but
Right.
so there is a lot of value in having somebody that knows how to navigate everything that's going on with all those changes and saving you the time of, trying to find the absolute cheapest flight. So I would agree with you
Absolutely.
on that one.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Well,
another industry we might
yeah.
know a little about.
Yeah, right. Indeed.
Yes.
Well, this has been fantastic, Kim, and I'm glad you could join us today. As always, I learned a lot from you, and we actually also have you coming to do a webinar for us with a little bit more detail about what's going on in the travel industry. So we are looking forward to that. That is on July 27th at 4 o'clock. So we will try to put a link in the show notes to the invite for that. And if you're on our mailing list, we will be sending that out to you. And if not, and you want to get on the mailing list, shoot us an email at info@srbadvisors.com. And Kim, I'm assuming that you are open to people contacting you about travel questions or things of that nature.
Absolutely. I would be happy to chat with anybody. So I know you've got my contact info. Do you want me to share it or?
Yeah, if you want to give us maybe your email address, and then I will make sure that we put your full contact info in the show notes and links to how to get a hold of you.
Perfect. Yeah, my email address is my name, Kim Barber, at myglobetrottertravel.com. You can also contact us through the website at myglobetrottertravel.com. So I'd be happy to help answer any questions and help get some things on the books for people who have been cooped up for a little bit too long over the last year.
That sounds fantastic, Dave. Where are you going first? You actually been on a
So
couple travels last year, haven't you?
yeah, pretty short road trip kind of things though. So we did a road trip down to Virginia back in May, and just booked a fishing trip to Montana for my son and my father and myself here at the end of August. Gonna go waste some time on
Nice,
the
Very
Yellowstone. So
nice.
yeah.
That should be
very
great.
cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Kim, thank you. This was good information. I look forward to talking to you again in a few weeks.
Yeah, thank you for having. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and excited to chat with you guys again later this month.
Great.
Awesome,
Thank you.
great, thanks.